Okay guys, today we're continuing our factoring polynomials. Today we're going to just focus on trinomial factoring. Okay, so you'll see that with your equations here, they're nearly exactly the same. The only difference now is when there's a coefficient in front of that first term. Okay, so we're on example 9. Okay. And let's go ahead and get started. Your first step is, now that I have a coefficient at the front that's other than 1, the first thing I'm going to do is multiply the last term, okay, which is my constant, times that first coefficient, and that's how I figure out what my equation or my expression is going to have to multiply to. It's going to have to multiply 3 times negative 15 is negative 45, okay? So I'm going to have to find two factors that multiply to 25, but also add to, that's going to stay the same. We're going to figure out what it needs to add to, okay? So we know that to get negative 45, I can do negative 9 times 5, but when I add that, that gives me negative 4. So that's not going to work. But if I did positive 9 and negative 5, when I add them, it's going to give me 4. So those are my two terms, okay, or what I'm going to help split my terms into. Okay, so then let's rewrite it. I still have 3y squared, and now I have not plus 4y, I have a plus 9y, and I have a minus 5y. Okay, and then minus 15. You see that 4y got split into a negative 9y, or positive 9y and a negative 5y. Okay. Now that I have this entire expression, I'm going to split it into two binomials. So I have 3y squared plus 9y. That's going to be the first one. And then I'm going to say plus, okay, this negative 5y minus 15. Okay. Now we're going to use what we did at the beginning of the lesson, the previous lesson, our factoring, our greatest common factor. I'm going to factor between these two binomials. What can I pull out of 3y squared and 9y? I can pull out a 3y. And what's left? 3y squared divided by 3y. I'm just left with 1y. Plus 9y divided by 3y, I'm just left with 3. Okay? And then for the next one, what can I pull out of a negative 5y and negative 15? I can pull out a negative 5. Negative 5y divided by negative 5 just leaves me with y. Negative 15 divided by negative 5 leaves me with positive 3. Okay? So I'm almost done here. I just factored those GCFs out. Now, you'll notice that these two should it be exactly the same. If it isn't, we went wrong somewhere. They should be exactly the same after you pulled out those GCFs. Okay, that's going to be the first binomial, is y plus 3. The second binomial that we multiplied together to get this right here is, it comes from this 3y and the negative 5. They make up that next one, 3y minus 5. Okay, and that's our final answer. When we multiply and use FOIL to multiply these out, this is going to be what we get as our factor. Okay? All right, example 10. First thing that we're going to do is multiply that coefficient times your constant. So it's going to have to, my factors are going to have to multiply to give me 6. And they're going to have to add to give me negative 7. Okay? So I know that 1 times 6 is 6, but when I add 1 and 6, I get positive 7. But if I did negative 1 times negative 6, that still gives me a positive 6, but I know that it adds to also equal negative 7. So those are the factors I'm going to use. So then go ahead and split it up. Bring down that 2x squared. And that's negative 7 now split into be a negative 1x. And also split into be with the other half being a negative 6x. And bring down the positive 3. Okay? And now again, split it into two binomials. I have 2x squared minus 1x plus negative 6x plus 3. Okay? Then the next step is to pull out your greatest common factors. What can I pull out of 2x squared and negative 1x? All I can pull out is an x. So I'm left with 2x on the inside here. Negative 1x divided by x is just negative 1. And what can I pull out here? I can pull a negative 3 out. I can try to get rid of this negative. Pull out a negative 3. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2. 3 divided by negative 3 is, oh, excuse me, there's an x there. And then 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Okay. So to see, my 2x minus 1 and my 2x minus 1, they match. That's my first term in my binomial. Excuse me, my first two terms in the binomial. And then in my second binomial, I have that x and then that negative 3, x minus 3. I use that from my GCFs, what I factored out. And that's your final answer. Okay. All right, example 11 is a little bit different now because what I have here is a negative in front of that first coefficient. I'm going to have to pull that out. I want you to factor that negative out first. So if I pulled out a negative 1, what am I left with? That becomes a 5m squared, a negative 6m, and a positive 1. Okay? I need you to make sure that you pull out that negative first. Okay? So now I need to multiply the two numbers. 5 times 1 is 5. And they're going to have to add to it's going to give me negative 6. Okay? So negative 1 times negative 5 is negative 6. Okay? Or excuse me. I'm sorry. Negative 1 times negative 5 is 5. And when I add them together, I get negative 6. So that's what I need. Okay? So then let's go ahead and split this. Keep negative 1 on the outside. I'm going to put it in brackets now because now I'm splitting this to become two things. Okay? I have 5m squared, and then I have a minus 1x, and I also have a minus 5x. That negative 6 split into two different terms then. And then I have still my plus 1. Okay? Now split these into, again, two binomials. Negative 1 times 5m squared minus 1x. And then I'm going to add it to the second one, negative 5x plus 1. Now use your GCF. We're still going to pull out our greatest common factor. Leave negative 1 on the outside of the brackets. Out of 5m squared, oh, I don't know where I get m's and x's. Look at me. This would be m's. What am I doing? Those would all be m's. I don't know where I'm getting m's and x's. I don't know where I got that from. Okay? So I have 5m squared and a negative m. I can pull out actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this term the negative 5 so I can pull out more for my GCF. And I'm going to make this term a 1. I apologize on that. So this should be a negative 5 and this should be a negative 1. Okay? I apologize about that. So now what I can do is pull out a 5m out of this first term. And I'm left with just 1m there minus 5m divided by 5m is just 1. Okay. And then pulling out of negative 1m plus 1, I can pull out a negative 1. And I'm left with just m, and then 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. Okay. So now I do have my two terms that match. So leave this on the outside, the negative 1. Okay, the terms that's the same, those inside those binomials right there, we have as m minus 1. And then times, bring your two GCFs out, 5m minus 1. Okay. And our last example here is we have a negative in front of this one as well. So let's go ahead and pull out that negative. I'm left with positive 3k squared plus k minus 2. So I'm going to multiply my 2. It's going to have to multiply my coefficient and my constant. So it's going to have to multiply to negative 6. And my factors are going to have to add to a positive 1. Okay. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And if I add those two together, I do get 1. Okay. All right, so then split up that k. Negative 1 times 3k squared. And I have a positive 3k. And I also have a negative 2k. Okay, those are my two factors that I used. And then minus 2. Okay, and then split it up. 3k squared plus 3k. And then I also have a plus negative 2k minus 2. Pull out my GCF. I can pull out 3k. I'm left with k plus 1. I can pull out a negative 2. And I'm left with k plus 1. And then rewrite your terms. Negative 1 times, here's my original, k plus 1, those are the two that are the same, times my GCF, which was 3k minus 2. Okay? You're going to pause, I'm going to pause this video and write our summary and then pause it to copy it down. Our code word for this lesson is volunteer. If you have any questions, please email me. Okay, so be sure to copy down this summary and make sure that you do the left-hand page and bring any questions that you have with you. Please go ahead and attempt it entirely though, okay? Thank you.